Welcome to the Boom Bap Kingdom. Peace and welcome to the Boom Bap Kingdom. I'm going to bring you guys a joint that I, as an MPC guy, an SP guy, kind of avoided. I never really, it wasn't really on my radar until they announced they were making a standalone. So I'm sure you guys know, based on the title of the video, what this is about. And this is going to be about my first initial impressions of the Native Instruments Maschine Plus. Off the rip, I am not a machine expert. Haven't used it before until, now. I've only owned the machine for roughly a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. Made a couple of beats on it, and the workflow started to make some sense to me. So I did an unboxing a while back, when the machine first came, and a while back, it's only like maybe 2 weeks ago. And I really liked, my initial impressions were the construction was dope, everything was cool. One thing I forgot to mention in my unboxing is that they do give you a 64 gig SD card, which I think is a great touch. Albeit it is a micro, they give you a micro in with an adapter. All right, I'm not a fan of micro personally. I prefer to use standard size. So I pulled this out and I put a 128 gig in. For now, at some point, I'll put a 500 gig in. I wish they would have gave you an option to also install an SSD drive. They do not, so you're stuck with just the SD card, but that's fine. It gets the job done. So, initial impressions, and then I'm gonna play a beat that I made on this joint. So, initially, when I took it out the box, A, I love the way it was packaged. B, I love the construction. It's metal all the way around, and the knobs are top notch. They're nice to the touch. The jog wheel or data wheel is really, really nice to use. The encoder knobs are very tight and heavy. That's what you would want to see in a new unit. Nice and heavy. What I notice about the encoders is that they kind of serve multiple functions, where you can go up and down. If you needed to go left and right, you use the corresponding knobs. And then if you tap them, they are also responsive. So you see on the screen here, I'm tapping, and you get options as you tap them. In this instance, I'm in the ideas mode, if you will. And so as I tap, it's moving from group to group or scene to scene, right? So nonetheless, I love the construction. I love the knobs, the pads. I mean, super duper sensitive. The pads are ridiculously sensitive. That can be good and bad, right? That is based on preference. I normally do not change my pad settings until after the unit has broken in a little bit. And then I may lower that sensitivity or bump it up depending on where it is by default. But I like that. The pads have a different physical feel to them, as opposed to, say, the older style like MV, even the MPC style, that classic gray rubber. They don't feel like that. They feel similar to the Force, similar to the 707. I did connect a keyboard controller. One thing I will say I really, really like about the Plus is that you can have a keyboard controller. So if I'm in group A and I go to patterns and events, I'm just in pad mode. I'm not in keyboard mode. And I can trigger those samples if I hit this pad. That's really dope, because a lot of the other machines you have to be in some sort of keyboard mode. Other things that I like about this guy, I really like the sample editing. The sample editing is really, really dope. So for instance, if I go into sample and I go to edit, I really like using these jog wheels or these value wheels, encoders, whatever they're called. Everybody has a different name for the same thing. These work really, really well for sample editing, and you can use this one to zoom in. You have a bunch of options here: normalize, reverse, etc., etc. Very well thought out, very well laid out. I really like the sound coming from the sample engine in the Maschine Plus. I'm a boom bap guy, so things gotta hit hard. You know, kicks gotta hit, snares need to crack, and it sounds great. They have these different modes: standard mode, MPC 60, 1200, 1200 L, LM, HM, H. But I can tell you that that's almost spot on. I was very impressed by the way that sounded. I'm not too sure what algorithm they're using to manipulate the sample, but I did on another track, I sampled at 45 and pitched it, and it sounded really close. I was impressed by that. And that's one of the things I like a lot, is that they give you these MPC 60, these 1200 engines. That's a head nod to the boom bap guys like myself. So I'm going to give Native Instruments a BBK salute for that one, right? And if you look, you know, I have a 60 and I have a 2400, which is as close as I'm going to get to a 12 right now, because those things are too expensive at this point, you know. So at any rate, the sample engine, fantastic. The sample editing, fantastic. Which takes me to their sounds. If you go into your browser, and this, I'm going to talk about some caveats as well, but this one, if you go into your browser and then you go into instruments, you can browse all of the expansions that you have loaded on here. And you know, they list them by categories, they list them by products, you know, FM8, Contact, Maschine, etc., and they list them by banks. So if you look, we can get very granular by using these encoders, right? All categories, FM8, I'm just going down the line, right? Contact, etc., right? And then you could break it down even further into types. If I want basses, strings, drums, etc., right? And then obviously, you could do the same with effects, and then you can do it with loops, and then you could do it with one-shots. Now for me, in order to browse what was on my SD card, I had to go to one-shots and then user, and then I was able to go to user content, and then I was able to browse my SD card. Now I did have a problem with one of their expansions, one that I actually purchased, Street Swarm. So I had purchased Street Swarm, and Street Swarm, I downloaded it to the unit. The unit does connect to Wi-Fi, which is pretty dope. When you're connected to Wi-Fi, you can go into settings and library, right? Obviously you have to connect to Wi-Fi, you log in, you go to library, and it will show you all of the products that are tied to your Native Instruments account. So I bought Street Swarm, I bought one other, and made a beat using some sounds from Street Swarm. But when I went to make another beat with that same expansion, Street Swarm wasn't giving me all of the options for the instruments, etc. So what I ended up having to do is put that in as a user. I copied it to the user folder on the SD card, and I was able to resolve that issue. I don't know if that's the true fix or whatever, but for that particular issue, when I copied Street Swarm to the user folder, then I was able to re-access all of those sounds. So obviously out the box, you want to register the unit, download the latest firmware, etc., and then, you know, get cracking. You download your expansions. They give you like maybe 6 out the box. Some of them are pretty big, like 3 or 4 gigs. Some of them are only like a gig. Some were like 800-900 megabytes or something like that. You know, they download pretty quick. They install, that takes a little while, but again, it is a standalone, so, you know, it is going to chug along in certain instances. But outside of that, it's rocking pretty hard. I haven't pushed the CPU past 30%, but again, I'm still kind of exploring how I want to make beats on this thing. The song idea mode is pretty dope. I played with that for this particular beat. And I also played with just doing patterns and using the different groups in the pattern, and then going into mute mode to actually play things and mute them out, like more tactile and old school, like if you were muting on a mixing board, muting tracks, right? In this scenario, I'm just muting whole groups. And that's, I kind of like that workflow a little bit more, but I will, you know, continue to explore the song idea and the scene mode. I live in ATL. I'm from New York, live in ATL, went to New York for my nephew's wedding, and I picked up a really dope travel case for this joint. You know, it even came with this little cable case. This was really dope. Picked it up on Amazon. Aproca, A-P-R-O-C-A. This was really dope. I took it with me so I could spend some time with it in the hotel. I was in the airport. I was banging out beats in the airport. Now, what do I not like about it? Bang, I'll tell you. One of the things I don't like is that from time to time, when you create a project and you load it up, I noticed I was getting feedback, like distortion coming out of my monitors, crunchy sound, distorted sound on my samples. I researched that hard, never found any definitive answers. I even opened up a ticket with Native Instruments, and I'm in the States, they're in Germany, so, you know, it's going to take them a while to really respond properly. I caught it in video when I'm describing, so I'll probably drop it here. Okay, so I just loaded up a project. This is a beat that I've made a few days ago. Last night I actually had this beat loaded, didn't have the problem. Now it's loaded up now, and this is the audio issue I'm describing. I went to the mixer mode just so you could see with the groups that nothing is clipping. So if you see, there's no clipping. But if you listen, as I was getting ready to make this video and I loaded this beat, right? So you can't hear it now, because what I did was I went into settings, I went into audio, and then if you look, each screen has multiple pages. You use these left-right buttons to get through those. So now I'm in audio, I wanted to check these routings, and my input is set to internal, which I want. And then, but what I did here was I checked the output, and I set left to 0, and I set, let me rephrase, I set left to, this is 1, output 0, and then 2, output 1. And when I did that, that crunchy distortion, it disappeared. So I don't know if that is like the fix for that, but if dudes are having that similar issue, just do what I did, because it worked. I guess I would call it a work around. So I'll talk about this little beat real fast. Obviously my kicks, let's go in here, kick, snare, you know. So you know, I chopped up some stuff, made a drum group. This group here, bass. This group, this is probably my main loop. Yeah, so this is just a little, that's all it is. And I came up with my own loop off that one little chop. That's a sample flip. Okay, this group, just a little crazy little guitar lick. This group here, now this is an expansion sound. I really, you know, really dope. Some strings, just another little offset. I chopped that up, turned it into a hook, and there's nothing there, nothing there. So that's it. You know, I didn't go crazy hard with the beat. I'm trying to be a little bit more simple and do more with less, right? You know, one of the things I like about this is that, let me just check my idea. All right, so there we go. Go here, I'm going to, and now this is before I knew how to name groups. Now I know how to do it. I'll go back and I'll correct that. But let me mute that out. So, you know, you could do slick stuff with the drops on the mutes, and that's kind of, I think, my approach on this machine. I'll be, no pun intended, right? I'll be using that approach when I drop stuff, when I put the beats on a hard drive, instead of using the song ID and whatnot. I think I'm just going to count the bars and, you know, use the mutes, because I just kind of like that. I think it's cool. I have not yet played with the effects strip, and the LEDs are pretty cool, because the LEDs will show you your measures. It's counting for you. And this is a 4x4, you know, beat, obviously, right? And that's pretty much that, man. I think the Plus is dope. I think Native Instruments, you guys did a great job. It was a tall feat to put your application as well as an operating system and everything into the one box. And I think they did a great job. I'm looking forward to future firmware updates and future new features, bug fixes, etc. It's gonna be dope, man. I'm gonna work on this a lot. You know, I really like it. I'm glad it's part of the Boom Bap King. All right. So with that being said, I'm gonna leave you guys with the finished joint. All right. First, I want to give a shout out to all the new subscribers. I thank you all, man, for peeping my content and following me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Make sure you like, you share, and I'm gonna keep the beats and the raw hip hop content coming, man. Alright? The Boom Bap Kingdom signing off. Peace.